The internet is a performative space, not an accurate to life space. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. For those of you who have been following, there is no longer a Christmas tree behind me. We have moved past the holiday season, much to my sadness. I, however, will be sad on my own time, and I will soldier on. Somewhat. Anyways, as per usual, where do I go to get my content for this podcast? I go to the internet. And granted, a podcast is in and of itself a bit performative, right? I'm sitting here talking to you, talking into a microphone, giving you my best foot forward. I'm not necessarily giving you a bad podcast, or at least not trying to. If it is a bad podcast, it's just not my fault. I can't help it. But today's content comes from an Instagram account from a guy, Chris Will X. I don't necessarily know who he is. The internet would tell me that he's somebody I probably should know. He hosts a podcast. He interviews relatively famous people. The most recent one I saw was Whitney Cummings. She's a comedian, and I say comedian, meaning a female comedian. She's quite good, very funny. And he does very interesting topics. They get very deep into kind of like life topics. This was a post. This was not a podcast he did, but he opened the post. It was like 7 slides. I didn't look at all of them because I was sort of drawn into the first one. Basically, the internet is a space for performance. It's not accurate to real life, even though most of our life is filtered through the internet. Now, that is interesting. That is quite interesting, and it lends credence to the struggles of people who say that the current generations are different. Not necessarily bad, they're just different. Let's think about that for a second. And if you're listening to me, you can think about it and cogitate on it a bit yourself. Cogitate's a great word for thinking. It's a not as often used word, but I really enjoy it. But let's think about that for a second. The internet is a performance space, even though most of our life is filtered through it, it's not accurate to life. So let's think about that. What do we mean by that? Well, everybody knows that if you go on Instagram, everybody's posting the highlights. Very few people are posting their, oh, this is a bad day I'm having. Even, I do the same thing because, people don't necessarily. When you show people pictures of what's going on, right? Like somebody comes over and it's like, what have you been up to lately? Oh, I took all these great pictures. Let's take a look at them. You don't show them necessarily bad pictures unless the picture is so bad it's funny and it's in conjunction with other good pictures. You just don't do that. We don't think people care about the bad moments. And not that they don't care about the bad moments, just that they don't need them, right? It's not a thing. They just don't need them. But those bad moments are sort of a key part of the human experience. Like no life is all good, bad. It's a mixture of good, bad, and frankly, ugly. You get moments where you're on top of the world. You get moments where you hit rock bottom. And then there are moments where you realize that you were standing at rock bottom. Somebody gave you a shovel, and for some reason you decided to dig to China. I've had those moments. You've had those moments. We all have had those moments. So when our life gets filtered through the internet, suddenly life is no longer about embracing the whole experience of life. It's about only embracing the highlights. Which is kind of a dangerous mindset to have. For millennials, it's slightly different, right? Because we grew up in a world before the internet. So our formative years were not in the internet. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, millennials, we have sort of a broader perspective on life because we've just had more of life. There's just more of it out there. But, younger kids in generation, even younger millennials and younger generation Z and generation Alpha as we go down, I don't know how far we're going to get. Everything they do is centered around their phone. It just is. It's not a good thing, bad thing, or an ugly thing by itself. But it's not centered around their phone because they're constantly doing research or whatever. It's centered around their phone because they're constantly posting pictures. They're constantly posting videos, doing all of these things, which are not in and of themselves bad behaviors. The problem is they are, I'd almost call them the highlight reel generation. They're the highlight reel generation. Everything they do is focused on getting that highlight instead of just living life. Now, frankly, millennials aren't much better. We got to age 25 and we started driving toward becoming highlight reels. We tried to become living highlight reels ourselves. But it's no longer about just experiencing life. And the problem is, if you're always constantly focused, I keep doing this thing with my mouth where I'm like twitching. If you're constantly focused on trying to get that highlight, let me backpedal for a second. Here's a good analogy. Let's say you play a sport. I'm borrowing this slightly from my acting teacher and twisting it a little bit. But let's say you play a sport. I'm wearing a Bills shirt. Let's say you play football. You're a young football player. You're learning the sport. When you're learning, it's mostly ugly. Frankly, it's mostly ugly. You don't know how to tackle yet. You don't know how to block yet. You don't know how to run the ball yet. You don't know how to catch the ball yet. The only way to learn how to do all those things is to embrace the bad moments and embrace the conditioning that comes along with missing a tackle, missing a block, dropping a ball, flunking a pass. Like, those are the things. Great players do generate highlights, but that's not their goal. They're not trying to make a highlight reel. They're just trying to play. They're just trying to experience the game. And if you watch a highlight reel, you'd think, let's take Josh Allen as an example. If you watched a Josh Allen highlight reel, you'd think the man walked on water. Frankly, in Buffalo, he kind of does. But if you watch an actual game, mixed in with those highlights, you are going to see plenty of bad moments, and you're going to see plenty of ugly moments. It's called the Josh Allen experience, right? He's got the highest of highlights, and then he'll throw a boneheaded interception. And the boneheaded interception is usually something, he's throwing an interception 40 yards downfield. Like, most people can't do that because most people can't make the passes he can make. But that's a result of him just playing the game and embracing his style of playing. He's not afraid of the bad moment. And that's really where we're coming to with a lot of these generations. I posit, follow me here if you want to. I posit that a lot of the rise in mental illness in millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, is because we spend so much time seeking the highlight starts to have less of a positive impact on us. Like, oh, that was a good moment. Well, of course it was a good moment. We're chasing that good moment. We're chasing that high. We start to fear the bad moment. And we start to dread the ugly moment. But when you live in fear of something, you're tentative. You don't fully go after life. Yeah, chances are, if you're doing something and it has a chance of generating a life highlight for you, it has a chance of generating a life lowlight. You could very easily fall flat on your face. I took off at age 30 to go become an actor. That was 3 years ago now. I very easily could fall flat on my face and be 40 years old and have nothing to show for what I'm doing. And if I don't take the full swing at it, I'm going to guarantee that I will have nothing to show for it because I will be living tentatively instead of just living. That's sort of where we're coming to here. And that's my long-winded, rambling run at this concept. I'm begging you people, don't fall into the trap of the internet. Don't fall into the trap of only chasing the highlight. Embrace the entire spectrum. Embrace all of life. And chances are, if you do that, you're going to end up with more highlights than lowlights. Or you're going to end up with more moments that you realize were highlights the whole time. That's all I got for you. I don't know if it made any sense. Have a great weekend. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Go Bills, future AFC East champions 2023, 2024, my lord. AFC East champion Buffalo Bills. Go Bills. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.